I don't have it yet. Too busy. I was on another program just now for...
Oil prices were up just a little bit, 75.20.
Oh, that's good. Anyway, what you should do with your gold and silver stocks and coins is hold them. Don't try to outsmart the market. Don't ever trade unless you have to. And you don't have to, so don't. And then he goes on to talk about the movie Kelly's Heroes, made in 1970, and highly entertaining, showing human nature, and especially the last scene. It also really shows just how much the value of our money has decreased over time. The movie was made in 1970. Kelly was Clint Eastwood, and they went after 14,000 bars of gold. And in the movie, the gold was valued at $16 million. And the bottom line is, today, it would be worth $540,000. And, wait a minute, 16 million. The gold was worth 16 million. It would be worth $540,120,000 now. And he goes on to talk about trading places, Eddie Murphy and Jamie Lee Curtis. And he had a very complimentary thing to say about Jamie Lee Curtis. It's good for anybody who wants to laugh. He gives a very good illustration of insider trading, which makes the commodity markets go. Apparently, when Gulf Coast oil mixes with red tide in algae, the results will be interesting. Could be like the book of Revelation, where it states that 1/3 of the seas turned to blood. On the other hand, World War II, there must have been 1 million gallons of oil spilled in the ocean from sunken Allied and Japanese tankers by submarines and all the other ships that were sunk. And the oceans are still here 65 years later. Good point. I have another one here, and the Melody has this. Why don't you read this one about the banks?
Well, let me
My throat is a little threadbare after an hour and 45 minutes.
Let me pull it up here. He talks about how prevalent were the bank branches in the past. He says the branches were not very common. Each failed bank would be counted as one bank failure. Today, one bank may fail, but it can affect many branches. This gentleman, Greg, went through all the FDIC press releases for this year. He says when all the branches of each failed bank is accounted for, you have 537 branches of the various banks that have been taken over by the FDIC to date. He says this seems to be one of the reasons why the number of bank failures to date seem low compared to predictions.
That's a good point. And we got one other here. Do you have the one from Vladislav?
Who?
Vladislav. It's a very common name.
I don't think so.
In Russia.
No, I don't.
Well, this is from Vladislav. And 2 questions for Melody. I understand she didn't have time to ask them during the show. I would appreciate it if you find a moment to respond. In terms of currencies, you recommend Swiss franc, Canadian, Australian, Norwegian as the only Scandinavian currency. You are rather cold to Denmark and Sweden, although Sweden apparently has relatively strong finances. The Swedish krona has been under tremendous pressure. Don't ask me why, but it has. And it's one of the reasons that the dollar has been strong. No, let me reverse that. It's one of the reasons the dollar was weak on the way down to 74 in the USDX. At least compared to other EU currencies. A balanced budget and relatively small government debt. I believe 40% smaller than Canada's as it appears. In your opinion, how strong or weak is the Swedish krona relative to the other currencies? Well, I would say it's probably right behind the others. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Sweden, and it's one of the 6 currencies that, no, is it? Let me think. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's one of the currencies in the USDX. So if they got a good economy, there's nothing wrong with it. I just can't recommend everything. I try to take what I think of the top 2. You've recommended several companies on the New York Stock Exchange in Toronto. Would you recommend one exchange versus the other in terms of currency stability, possible bank exchange holidays, or similar force major events, which can be country specific? Are there any Europe-based or EU-traded AU gold silver companies you know alike? No, I don't have anything. The only company that I like that has a property in Finland is Agnico Eagle. And as far as the exchanges are concerned, I think you get better executions in Canada than you do on the New York or the over-the-counter market. And this is an interesting question further on. In your experience in selecting the stocks that you select, where you take into account management quality and geopolitical stability consideration is invaluable. Do you also publish or can provide by email some valuation estimates for these companies, perhaps normalized in the current gold silver rate, wherever you feel accumulating these shares are advantageous? I'll answer that part of it. Gold and silver coins and bullion and shares, you buy them. You don't try to trade them. You don't try to pick a bottom. You just hope that you get it cheap. And you keep on buying them. And I do that all the time, for me. Not stocks, I just buy coins, because I don't want there to be any conflict of interest. And so the answer is, Vladislav, that just buy them. And I know the managements in one of these companies. In fact, I spent an hour on the phone yesterday with the president of Mindfinders, and I put out a report on it yesterday. He's looking for a ratio indicator. You don't need it. You buy it, you go long, you stay long. When I think we're near the top, I'll tell you. Then you can decide what to do. And he talks about valuations and that sort of thing here, which I normally don't get into. He does mention that I am not big on groups such as Gold Money and Bullion Vault and Perth Mint and GLD and SLV and others who issue certificates. And I think people should take delivery of their coins. And people who live in the United States should have their coins in the United States. I don't see any sense in, having them someplace else unless you live there. That's my feeling on it. And I'm sure it's Melody's as well. I get 2 more here. Oh, maybe this came a little bit. I don't know. It just came in. Gold should be up another 2 to 3% today, and silver should be up 6% at least. They are holding them back, and the ETFs, as we all suspected they would. I bet you there will be a lot of buying after the bell and trying to find good metal over the weekend, and could be a real issue. In other words, the sellers covering their shorts and getting physical to do so. They played that game yesterday in the market and took out everyone's stops. Then JPMG, and Citi we're right there to buy them up all over again, just like the Rushells did when Napoleon fell to Wellington or Waterloo. Will it work again, or is big money ready to corner the market? And they ain't going to corner anything. They're on the run. Greece has turned them upside down. My last one. Michael, we have witnessed a non-event rig leak turn into a disaster comparable to the Valdez. The earmarks and fingerprints of the aluminist are all over this. The fishermen from Louisiana are not going to take too kindly to all these federal rules, etc. There are fistfights occurring as early as last Saturday. These men live outside the system already, and for generations, I can assure you, once they